The Birdman is back, and he's once again 540 Christ-airing his way into my house and into my heart, like some kind of majestic, motorhead-fueled messiah of manuals, methods, and Madonnas. As the follow-up to 2020's absolutely delightful remake of the first two Pro Skater games, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 may lack the outright initial novelty of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and it definitely colours outside the lines a bit more while bringing these classics back to life, but it's also impossible for me to deny how infectiously fun it is being transported back to 2001 for some authentically old-school arcade skating action. The pleasure is to play, barks Lemmy Kilmister in the iconic speed metal masterpiece Ace of Spades, which was the high-energy opener for the original THPS3 more than 2 decades ago, and returns to do the same job in THPS 3 and 4. You're damn right it is, Lemmy. Five years ago, developer Vicarious Visions achieved the improbable with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. Despite the stench of Robomoto's disastrous Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 still lingering in the air like a swampy pair of SB dunks, Vicarious Visions produced one of the most pitch-perfect and essential remakes of the modern era. One that would go on to record the highest first month of sales for any game in the long-running Tony Hawk series. For its valiant efforts, Vicarious Visions was promptly shut down. And Hawk himself confirmed plans to produce Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 were subsequently kick-flipped to the curb. Fortunately, this decision was reversed and the project landed at Iron Galaxy. Despite having a different developer at the helm, THPS 3 and 4 remains mostly in sync with the look and structure of THPS 1 and 2. That is, the graphics are similarly crisp and colourful, and the performance is robust and reliable. The skate roster is a mix of returning pros from the original games, the new additions from THPS 1 and 2, and some fresh faces debuting in the series. Yes, Bam Margera is here too. He may be absent from the intro sizzle, but you'll be able to find him in the unlockable secrets. Both games in the package are again represented as two separate strings of levels, but beyond that, everything is unified. Moves and tricks are common across both games, including things like, say, spine transfers, which were only originally introduced in THPS 4. On top of that, the stat points you collect playing one game will improve your skater in the other, and any currency you gather goes to one central kitty to spend on kit for your custom skater.
Camera's ready.
Or secret skaters, fancy effects, or special visual filters. Basically, if you've played THPS 1 and 2, you'll know what to expect. But even if you haven't, I anticipate you'll catch on quickly to the neat and tidy 2-for-1 philosophy at work. The magic of THPS 3 and 4 lives in its levels, and despite a couple of apparent absences, the marvellously remade maps are the stars of the show. As was the case with THPS 1 and 2, it's just so charming to be carving and comboing my way through such familiar geometry, only with a slick and modern facelift. From feeling the heat of the molten metal in Foundry, to ascending the levels of Alcatraz, unlocking and arriving in each returning map has been a huge highlight. Airport is still an impeccable string of skate lines. Cruise ship is still a wonderfully Moorish challenge to score crazy combos without cannonballing into the Caribbean. It's great stuff. Kona still suffers from parts of its real-world inspired layout being a bit of a plain space for the zany arcade skating of a Tony Hawk's game. And London's shift to night seems to make it a little more boring to look at, but there aren't really any complete duds here aside from THPS4's Zoo, which has been turned into a tournament level. The zoo is now abandoned, so it's now lifeless and lonely, and the night setting is once again dull on the eyes. While there's no sign of THPS4's Chicago or Carnival maps, there are 3 brand new ones Iron Galaxy has added to the THPS4 campaign. I'm not sure how I feel about it in purist terms, although Water Park and Pinball are both seriously excellent levels. An abandoned water park full of empty pools and crusty old water slides is such a perfect environment for a pro skater game, it's almost hard to believe it didn't already exist. And Pinball is seriously eye-catching. From the chrome sheen of the shiny metal ball to the gigantic Tony Hawk looming over the machine itself. Level goals are mostly drawn from the original games. Iron Galaxy hasn't arbitrarily moved the hidden tapes somewhere else, but there are a few new or amended ones throughout. These generally work. For instance, the incredibly easy Trash the Museum on cruise ship has been replaced with a far more satisfyingly complex trick gauntlet you need to complete in order to produce the same slapstick result.
That could have put someone's eye out!
But there are a couple of misses. Switching out London's Stompy the Elephant for a weird bloke in his undies is an odd pivot. Most of the liberties have been taken in THPS4's levels, where there's been some significant pruning. Essentially, THPS4's levels have all been streamlined to function under the classic 2-minute timer, so this means you won't be freely skating around speaking with fellow pro skaters and receiving verbal goals from them as you encounter each one. Those conversations are gone, and so too are lots of goals. I will note that some that I thought were missing appeared as one of the 5 extra pro goals that become available after getting every initial goal in all parks. We even get combo goals for THPS3 levels that never previously had them, which is cool. But there's give and take. Either way, the THPS4 campaign generally only feels like a remake in brief bursts. Most of the time, it's really a reimagining. You can change the timer to be up to 60 minutes as a new gameplay mod, joining the list of cheats returning from THPS 1 and 2, but while it reduces friction, it doesn't really make it any more like classic THPS 4. On the topic of goals, however, elsewhere there's been some well-considered evolution to the park editor, which now features a create a goal function. This is a huge plus. Now user levels don't have to exclusively be places for you to just cruise around until you get bored and decide to move on. They can be a whole new pillar of your THPS 3 and 4 playtime, tackling new challenges and collecting skate letters, combo lines, and hitting smashables in fresh maps every time you boot up. I think this has massive promise. While I'm certain the reimagining of THPS4's campaign mode will be a bona fide bugbear for some purists, personally I'm far more disappointed in the total about-face on display when it comes to THPS 3 and 4's soundtrack. It's actually a genuinely baffling situation. The importance of soundtracks to the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series is a well-established fact. They've achieved legendary status in the business, and multiple oral histories have charted the stories behind their creation over the years. In 2020, the philosophy was abundantly clear when it came to THPS 1 and 2. The soundtracks were a critical part of the equation, and it was a central priority. 22 out of the 25 songs that made up the original soundtracks to those first 2 games were resecured for the remake, and only 3 could not be licensed again at that time. With 22 returning songs and 37 fresh ones, 59 songs in total, the soundtrack to THPS 1 and 2 is more or less spot on. Unfortunately, THPS 3 and 4 is a different story altogether. Whether it's a coincidence or otherwise, THPS 3 and 4 has also arrived with 59 songs in total, but the balance is all wrong.
Look at that, skater.
Yes, it's certainly true that both THPS 3 and THPS 4 had significantly larger soundtracks than the original pair of games. 20 for THPS 3 and 35 for THPS 4. And yes, hypothetically resecuring every single song probably wouldn't have left much scope to augment the soundtrack with new music released since the heyday of the original Pro Skater games. Therefore, I would have been content to concede that a fair compromise would have been half and half, or at least a similar mix to THPS 1 and 2. Say, 20 or so classic songs and the remainder new. We didn't get close to that. Bafflingly, we got just 6 out of 20 from THPS 3 and a mere 4 out of 35 from THPS 4. That's 10 total, less than 20% of the original songs, and less than half the number of returning songs THPS 1 and 2 has. In actual fact, there are bands that weren't even asked, and are as surprised as their fans to be absent from the THPS 3 and 4 soundtrack.
Not my banners!
Apologists may badger me about using Spotify instead, but despite the presence of Body Jar, It's simply not the same as having the music baked into the game where it belongs. That is, I count myself lucky that Body Jar's Not the Same made the cut. Depending on the day of the week you ask me, it's near enough my favourite song of all time. But my fellow old fans may not be as fortunate. After all, even the title track for THPS4 was brushed aside. Simply put, this is a fumble for any remake, but it's a particularly disappointing one for a pair of games in which the music is a key pillar of what makes them special and memorable. Don't get me wrong, there are some genuinely great new tracks on THPS3 and 4 that have instantly worked their way from the game to my daily playlists. Dog Ears by Urethane, Hollywood Sucks by Kenny Hoopla, Boys in the Better Land by Fontaine's DC, Roller by the St. Cecilia, and Better Off by Common Perry are all total bangers, and I wasn't previously familiar with a single one of them. Rescuing Lupe Fiasco's skateboarding anthem Kick Push from being forever marooned in 2006's Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam was also a commendable decision. However, I just cannot ignore the casual indifference shown to the original soundtracks.
Fire Brigade!
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 is a largely successful rejuvenation of the acclaimed 2001 and 2002 originals, and another very welcome time capsule of everything great about the golden age of early 2000s gaming, before microtransactions and battle passes botched everything right up. Like 2020's 1 and 2 before it, THPS 3 and 4 proves again the series' over-the-top skateboarding formula is totally timeless and remains suitable for all skill levels. Simple at first blush, but extraordinarily sophisticated beneath the surface for those with the minerals, or the muscle memory, to push their combos to colossal levels. However, syncing THPS4 with the classic 2-minute timer of the initial trilogy is probably going to be a sore point with fans who strongly regard the series' fourth installment as their favourite, and discarding a whopping 80% of the original THPS3 and THPS4 soundtracks is a startlingly naive choice to make about such a famously crucial component of those games. No T.N.T? Watch me explode! For more recent reviews, check out our verdicts on FBC Firebreak and Splitgate 2. And for everything else, stick with IGN.
Go forth!